Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Rogue Eye Media. My name is Alex Schlerf, and today we're going to be looking at the future box office for the summer, specifically three July releases. It's a big summer for movies, and it's starting obviously this weekend with when I'm recording this, Lilo and Stitch and Mission Impossible are both coming out. So that's kind of kicking off the summer. If that wasn't, Thunderbolts about a month ago. But kind of the big box office attraction of this summer is the run in July of Jurassic World, Superman, and Fantastic Four. So, what I'm going to be doing today is going through each one of those movies, talking about first off just my personal hype for each of those movies, and also just kind of trying to see which one of them will come out on top in terms of the box office. Because it's been a big discussion, because these are three very big franchises or brands and they're expected to do very well, but they're all competing against each other, even if separated by a little bit of time. So it's going to be very interesting to see who comes out on top out of all these three films. And like I said, these are like the three big releases coming out that month. So that's what I'm going to be doing today is looking at each of those films, talking about their box office merits, and at the end of the day, ranking who I think will make the most and probably making an educated guess of how much I think they'll each make, even though that's kind of, just a crapshoot at this point. So, yeah, the first movie out of the list, if we're going in chronological order, going with the one that's releasing first, is Jurassic World Rebirth coming out on July 2nd. My kind of experience with this franchise is I've seen a lot of these Jurassic Park or World movies. Obviously, I've seen the original and I've seen some of the newer ones with Chris Pratt. But I've never really gotten into the franchise, and this is like a me thing. I'm really talking personally here. I know these movies are very beloved and they work a lot for a lot of people. To me, they're not something that I've ever got super invested in. I usually like the movies when they kind of reset the characters, which is why I'm excited more for this upcoming one. I'll talk about that in a second. But just as the franchise as a whole, I know it is a very big draw. I know it's a very popular franchise. And obviously, the original Jurassic Park is iconic. Like, I'm not debating that. That's obviously one of the most iconic movies ever. And it has a ton of things going for it. And I'm not going to say like the newer ones have been bad, but I think I watched the first and maybe the second one of the Chris Pratt movies, and I kind of just never got into it. It was kind of just it felt like the franchise was kind of running into an end. It was like we need to spice up this franchise. We need to bring something new, bring in new characters, bring in a new setting. Not like a new setting in terms of like not dinosaurs anymore, but you know what I mean. Like I wanted them to spice it up, which is why when we started hearing about Jurassic World Rebirth, I was excited because you have a brand new cast. A brand new director. As far as I know, from what we know about the trailers and the plot so far, the setting is kind of different and it's not the same as, the old Jurassic Park movies. So, to be honest, like this franchise again, out of these next two movies we're gonna say, just because I am a big comic book fan, it'll probably be the one that I'm least hyped for. But number one, the trailers have looked pretty solid for this movie, and I love the cast. I mean, you've got Scarlett Johansson, Jonathan Bailey, and Mahershala Ali. That's just an amazing trio of actors. I'm sure there's more in there that I'm not realizing, but that is a big key with this franchise. It is already usually a big box office successor, and we don't need to go back through the old movies, but these movies always make money. Like even if they're bad, critically received, like the last one, they will always make money because this is a big brand and is very profitable. And I'm sure there was a bit of a concern from the kind of creators of this franchise. I can't remember what company is distributing it, but I'm sure there's a big concern after the last couple of movies flopped critically, not commercially, but critically, that once they came out with another Jurassic movie, that fans wouldn't want to go to as much as they have for the previous ones. And I think that's the reason they kind of done a bit of a reboot here. And not like a reboot in the sense that like it's a whole new thing, but a reboot in the sense that they bring in this cast that is full of mostly A-listers. Like Scarlett Johansson is obviously a very big A-list actor. Mahershala Ali, two-time Academy Award nominee. Jonathan Bailey's been rising in popularity after being in Wicked last year. So you put together a cast that is star-studded and is very marketable, and we're going to talk about it again when we get to Fantastic Four. You put that together with a director in Gareth Edwards that is very experienced and is very popular, has been very popular recently with a lot of movies that he's done. Mix that with the Jurassic brand, and you get a product that, if it is, exceeding with a successful product. I don't know what I'm trying to say there. If it is good, like if it is an actual good movie, I'm not saying it has to be, peak cinema, 100% Rotten Tomatoes, but like if it is a solid movie or better to the general audience, and I'm getting kind of ahead of myself here, that is a good product for them. And that's what they're going for here is pairing not only the just baseline franchise of the Jurassic, the dinosaurs attacking in the park and all that and everything being good at first and going into chaos. Like they're taking that and matching it with a whole new cast of very popular actors right now, very talented actors, obviously, and with a great director. And clearly the film looks good from the trailers. So, and they're taking that and bringing it all together to hopefully bring in a product that is not only really good, but also doing really good at the box office. So that's Jurassic World Rebirth for me. I am excited because I do like Mahershala Ali, I do like Scarlett Johansson, and I like Jonathan Bailey and Wicked too. I think Gareth Edwards is a talented director, and I think the trailers, although they didn't blow me away, I do think the trailers looked very good, and I think that this will turn out being one of the better Jurassic World movies, compared to the kind of previous three or four that we've gotten. So yeah, that's first off Jurassic World. And I'm going to circle back around talking more specifically about its box office draw, but that's Jurassic World. Um, Next, obviously, is Superman, which is coming out on July 11th. And this is a new chapter for DC and the character of Superman. For those who don't know, Superman, this movie is starting off the new DC universe. So there obviously was the previous, kind of 10 years where it was mostly Zack Snyder films with Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman and Aquaman and the Justice League movies. Like that was kind of its own universe. And unfortunately, those movies flopped both critically and commercially, which was forcing DC to kind of make a move here and say, we need to bring in someone who can be the creative head of the studio, similar to Kevin Feige with Marvel Studios, because what they've always failed at is creating that interconnected universe and building up to these big level events. DC previously has failed at that. They haven't been able to mirror the success of Marvel Studios. That's just a fact. And that's why they brought in James Gunn to be the head of DC Studios to kind of again mirror that creative work that Kevin Feige does with Marvel, where he's involved in the creative process of all these movies. He's not directing any of them like Gunn is doing here, which will be interesting. But that's what they're kind of doing here. And Superman is the first, I guess if you're not counting Creature Commandos, but let's just say movies here, Superman is the first movie to kick off this new era of DC. And this is a movie that has lot riding on it for DC because I know for a fact that the general audience is very down on the DC brand right now because there is a kind of cult fan base for those old DC movies and Henry Cavill Superman and that kind of thing. But for the most part, those movies were not very well received critically, and there are not a lot of reasons for someone to go and trust in a DC movie right now. And really, the only reason people are trusting in this movie is because they have done this reset, and it's a whole new cast, a whole new crew of filmmakers. It's James Gunn, who we know has had success with comic movie before, with not only in DC with the Suicide Squad, but obviously the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy in Marvel, and those have obviously been incredibly well received by fans and general audience alike. So it was to me a stroke of genius bringing him in, not only as the head of the studio, but to direct this first film and kind of kick us off with this new era of Superman, but also DC. So, yeah, my kind of personal connection with Superman is not very large. People who know me know that I am pretty much exclusively a Marvel fan, and that's kind of how I've been my whole life. When I was a kid, I was big into Batman, so if there's any character from DC that I really care about, it is Batman. And I'm not saying I don't really care about Superman; it's just never been a character that I'm super invested in personally. But my hype for this movie is coming from honestly, number one on the list is James Gunn being behind it. Like, I am just a huge James Gunn fan. Like I said, I love the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is one of the best comic book movies of all time. I don't think that's even debatable. And I loved what he did with the Suicide Squad 2. I liked Peacemaker. I liked Creature Commandos. Like everything. I have not personally seen a James Gunn project that is bad, as far as I remember. Like at least comic book projects. All of his comic book projects that I've seen have been, from good to amazing and nothing less than that. So I do have a lot of faith in James Gunn in kind of reigniting this universe. And again, that is kind of the main reason I have the hype behind this movie. And also behind that is the fact that I've really liked the promos so far. I watched I've seen both the trailers. The second trailer just came out recently, and the first trailer really like blew me away. It didn't blow me away in the sense that I was like, this is going to be the greatest movie of all time. But I watched it and I was like, all right, DC, it has something going again. Like this is a DC movie that I can get behind and be excited about. And the second trailer I watched it the first time and I was like, that's whatever. But the more I've seen it, I've appreciated it more because it's telling you more about the plot than trying to hype you up. So I understand that. But yeah, I think that I don't have much room to speak on like if the castings are good or not, because again, I don't really know the source material. I've never read Superman comics. I don't really have much experience with Superman besides from just the Henry Cavill movies and every movie that he's been in. Yeah, I think that's literally my only experience watching a Superman thing. But I don't know. I think David Cornswet as Superman, he looks good so far. I think all the other casting, it's a huge cast. Like it's literally introducing so many different heroes and so many, Lex Luthor, Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. Like you're bringing in a bunch of characters in this movie. So I do wonder if that will cause a problem if it's going to be too messy. That would be an understandable concern for me. But like I said, I can't really speak on those castings and if they're super comic accurate, if they're great or not, because until I actually see the movie. Because again, I don't have experience with the source material. But yeah, I mean, everything looks good so far. I mean, really, I think this movie, again, it's going to depend on if they can get the general audience back on board because I think that this movie is going to be very much catering, like the next movie we're going to talk about, is going to be very much catering to the comic book fans or the lifelong fans of Superman because it really feels like they're very much stripping this character down to his comic book origins. And I'm not saying that cannot appeal to the general audience too, but my point is that they need to win over the general audience because I think DC fans will show up to see this movie, but they need good word of mouth because, again, people in the general audience do not trust the DC brand right now. And, some people can trust it because they know James Gunn taking over, and this is a separate thing. But people who are just walking up into the theater on a random day in July and saying, "Oh, there's a new Superman movie out, but no, I just saw the other one and it wasn't good, so I don't want to watch that." Even if they're not connected at all, like that's just how people think. So that is really going to be their box office target for that. And again, I'm going to circle back around to this, but will this movie win over the general audience to get it to that, billion-dollar range or anywhere in that range at all? So there's a lot riding on this for DC because if they get out the gate with their first project with a miss, then it is not looking good for the support for their future projects. And I believe the next one's Supergirl coming out next year, which I'm also very excited about, but that's a topic for another day. So yeah, Superman, I am very excited for because I am a comic book fan and I do appreciate the fact that they are bringing this character back to its very basis in the comics. And I know as a fellow Fantastic Four fan, which I'm about to talk about, I know that Superman fans have been waiting for a very long time to get an actual comic accurate portrayal of Clark and of the character of Superman. So I can appreciate the fact for those fans and I can celebrate that. And like I said, James Gunn, I trust him with my life. So I know I'm pretty confident that this movie will at least be like solid 4-star territory. Like I don't see it dipping below that. Again, could be wrong, but I trust James Gunn a lot. So that's Superman July 11th. Again, we'll circle back around at the box office. Last and certainly not least for me is Fantastic Four First Steps on July 25th. Um, I'm just gonna get it right off the bat. If you've never watched one of my videos before, the Fantastic Four mean a lot to me, and they are my favorite superheroes of all time. The first comic that I ever read in my entire life was Fantastic Four #1. I have a whole collection of Fantastic Four comics. I've literally been, like I said, like my entire life reading them. My favorite comic run of all time by Jonathan Hickman is Fantastic Four. Yeah, I could go on and on. Like I love these characters so much, and not only do I love these characters, like they actually mean something personally to me. So this is a movie that is, again, already like by far the most I'm hyped for out of all of them just because of how much the characters mean to me. And it is a Marvel movie and a Marvel fan. Um, but speaking from just a basic level, again, this is going to be very similar to Superman, where the Fantastic Four is a brand that before now being taken over by Marvel Studios, has had three mostly unsuccessful film entries. We had the 2000s movies with Chris Evans and Jessica Alba. We had two of those movies which were like fine critically, like decently critically received and did fine at the box office, but not enough obviously to continue that franchise past the second movie. And then fast forward 10 years after that, we got the atrocious Miles Teller, Michael B. Jordan movie from Fox again, and that one flopped critically and commercially to the point where the Fantastic Four brand was just dead for a while, completely dead in the water. And that is what obviously propelled Marvel Studios to eventually buy back the rights to the Fantastic Four, and now Kevin Feige can adapt these characters in his universe under his image. So that's a very important clarification to make for those who don't know. Like those previous three movies, Marvel Studios, who has made this incredible cinematic universe, had nothing to do with those movies. Like they did not have the rights. That was all Fox, the same studio that made the X-Men movies that were up and down as well. So if you're kind of going into this thinking, well, they've failed the Fantastic Four already twice. They're probably going to do it again. Like, I mean, that's obviously a possibility, but it's important to remember that that is a separate thing. Like those movies are completely separate, and this is Marvel Studios. This is not Fox. So, um, that's important to remember. And I think that that is the trend they have to break is the fact that those characters have not had a great go around on screen so far. And this is kind of, I wouldn't say like a last ditch attempt, but if this movie didn't do well, it might be. You know what I mean? So, but this is another movie, and I can speak compared to Superman, I can speak very, very confidently about this one because, again, I have read these characters my entire life, and I have a genuine, serious knowledge of what an adaptation of the Fantastic Four should look like on screen. And for all intents and purposes, for everything we have seen so far, this looks like a genuinely beautiful and perfect adaptation of the four on the screen. And it's the only time we ever got that. Like, I'm sorry, I know there's people that like those old Fantastic Four movies, and I know people have said they deserve better, that cast should come back. Like, and listen, I'm not the guy who is like, it has to be comic accurate in every sense and all that, but like, those movies were not only not great in general, they were a very poor adaptation of the characters. And I'm not going to get into it. That's a discussion for another day. But like, this is important to know that, like Superman with Fantastic Four, they are bringing these characters back to day one, 1960s, Marvel Studios' first family, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby comics. And that is what they are doing with this movie. And they're bringing it back down to their comic roots. And clearly, with the looks of the characters and the dialogue we've seen so far, and the villains and the aesthetic, everything they're doing is incredibly accurate to the source material, and I can see that that is clearly what they were going for with this movie. And I can tell that's one of the reasons they brought these characters and the setting of this movie to be set in an alternate retro future 60s timeline. For those of you who don't know, that's where the movie is set. It is not set in the main MCU timeline. It's all in the same under the same roof, like it's all in the same multiverse. And this might get complicated, but um for those of you who've seen Thunderbolts, obviously, no, I don't want to spoil Thunderbolts. Never mind. But if you watch Thunderbolts or Captain America: Brave New World, like the Earth that is taking place on is not the Earth where the Fantastic Four movie is going to take place. It is, and you can kind of tell that based on the aesthetic and the dynamics of the characters. So that's what they're doing here, and I think that is a very interesting concept, and I think that is something that can be very refreshing to comic book fans and general audience fans alike, is to see this kind of new aesthetic and new take on a superhero project. I'm not saying it's not going to follow a similar formula to most of the Marvel movies we see, but in terms of like the cinematography and in terms of like the storytelling they can do without the shackles of MCU continuity, for the time being, for at least this movie, that is something that is, I think, going to be very appealing to people, and they can kind of go in, watch this, and say, this is really like its own thing. And we're going to see these characters obviously in Doomsday and Secret Wars, and they're going to eventually cross over to the MCU properly. Like we know that for a fact. But for this first film, it is its own thing. It is in its own universe, and it is its own aesthetic. And yeah, I again, it's going to be very interesting to see how much that appeals to the general audience, good word of mouth permitting. So, and then another thing that Marvel has done with this film is they have brought in a cast of very marketable actors. You have Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Joseph Quinn, Eben Moss-Bachrach, who are a mix of not only marketable actors, specifically with Pedro Pascal, who's like on top of the world right now, and there's people that will literally go to a movie only because Pedro Pascal is in it. But then you also have a lot of rising stars, and specifically Joseph Quinn and Eben Moss-Bachrach, and then Vanessa Kirby's kind of a mix of both because she's a rising star, but also incredibly talented. We saw her win a bunch of awards for The Crown not too long ago, and is becoming a marketable actor in herself and a very recognizable actor in herself. So they hired four people for this cast that are very recognizable, marketable, and can really delve into these character archetypes and play them for 10 to 20 years. And again, as someone who loves the source material, everything we've seen so far, it looks like they really nailed those castings, and that makes me so happy because, listen, those I get it. Those old movies are iconic, and I get people don't want to move on from those and those casts, but like, guys, I'm sorry. Those are not proper interpretations of the Fantastic Four. There's some good aspects to it. Like I think Chris Evans is pretty good. I think Jessica Alba is pretty good. Um, don't get me started on the older Reed Richards characters or actors, but like they're solid, but there's a lot of things that they change that are literally the basis for the motives and arcs of these characters, of the four of our four main characters. So I think with this casting, not only did they nail it on a sense of like these actors look very perfect for their roles, specifically Vanessa Kirby, just like that is like, I mean, so far that's been my favorite one. I mean, Eben is a close second, but all of them, I love all of them. But that Vanessa Kirby's looks amazing so far in terms of fitting into Sue Storm. But not only are they doing that, is hiring people that are going to seriously be able to fit in these roles perfectly and again strip them down to their comic counterparts. They also hired a cast of rising stars and marketable stars. I think that's going to help this movie out a lot. Like I said, this cast of Pedro, Vanessa, Joseph, and Eben are marketable and are going to do well and are going to bring people into their seats in July on July 25th and beyond, just because they're, a very popular cast. And I think that's going to be important, specifically Pedro Pascal. Like he is so marketable right now, and especially with Last of Us and Mandalorian, like he is a if he's still considered a star in the making, I think he's a star at this point. So, and whether you like him or not, that's the reality. So, yeah, I think final thoughts for right now is that I think this movie is even more so than Superman is going to hit, and I'm going to be repetitive here, but is going to hit very, very well with the comic book and superhero film fans. I think it's going to do very well because it's going to be a very successful adaptation of these characters. But will people go to the box office to see a Fantastic Four movie in 2025 after the failure of the previous adaptations? That is the question. So, and listen, like that, if we're talking about hype here again, like Fantastic Four is number one, everything else is way far behind. I'm just gonna be honest there, but I'm gonna try to be unbiased as possible when I'm doing these predictions. So, yeah, I guess I can just start with doing my predictions of who is going to place number one, two, and three. I think two and three here were very challenging for me, but my number one is clear, so I'll start with that. I think and usually I'd go three, two, one, but I'm gonna have a kind of longer discussion about the next two. But my clear number one for this box office battle in July would be Jurassic World Rebirth, and the reason for that is because there is the most box office success. There's most precedent for box office success with this franchise compared to the other two. And that's not to say that these movies, Superman and Fantastic Four, can't be marketable. That's not saying that. But the fact of the matter is that we've seen however many six, seven, eight Jurassic World movies or Jurassic Park movies all succeed at the box office. Even again, as I said, with the poor critical reception, even with the poor critical reception of the most recent movies, they have done well at the box office. And that is the number one thing this movie has going for it is the fact that it has that previous precedent of box office success. But not only that, again, you're bringing in an A-list cast, specifically Scarlett and Mahershala, and two actors that, again, I think people will go to the movies to see them specifically. There's a lot of people who are fans of those actors. And so that's another thing that's got going for it. It has, I think, sold a lot of people with the trailers. It's been playing in front of movies for a while now, so I think people will see it as one of the top summer billing attractions, if not the first big summer movie. If you don't really count May movies as that, it obviously is that. And it's obviously kicking things off in July. So not only is it going to have 9 days exactly before, or I guess, and 9 days exactly before Superman comes out to build a box office resume, it will have legs throughout that because of how popular this franchise is. And there will be people who will go to the movies to see Superman and then also see Jurassic World at the same time. So yeah, I think this one is a clear number one, just based off the fact that this movie or this movie franchise in this Jurassic franchise has the most previous success at the box office compared to these next two that we're going to say. So I'm actually real quick. I should have had this prepared, but I'm going to look up what the last Jurassic World Dominion box office. So we're just gonna because this movie was received very poorly critically. Jurassic World Dominion box office. Let's see. In total is what I'm kind of looking for here. Again, I should have this prepared, so that's my bad. So Jurassic World Dominion. Again, this movie was received very poorly critically. If this was not a movie that people enjoyed and people knew going into it that it wasn't well critically received, it made $1 billion. It made like 1 billion, $1,000. It made just over $1 billion. So this is what I'm saying. Like this franchise, even with a movie being bad, can still make $1 billion at the box office. And I personally think this upcoming movie will be good. So who knows what the potential is with this movie being good in a box office that is 5 years removed from COVID, obviously. Like, when did Dominion come out, by the way? Um, yeah, and I should have had all this prepared. Yeah, so this came out 2 years after COVID. So like this was still a movie that was Dominion was still a movie that was suffering from again that COVID box office and people not really wanting to go to the movies. And again, that's another reason to see like, okay, so this movie, previous movie in the franchise was bad. Um, or was received poorly by critics and fans and came out at a time where people were still hesitant to go to the movies in general because of COVID. And so now you're getting that where it's been 5 years removed since COVID. This is a movie in Rebirth that is expected to be pretty good, at least like a 4 star out of five or higher. And you have and the cast isn't more marketable than the previous one because the last one had like Jeff Goldblum and all of them come back. But I think you get my point. Like, if this movie is actually good and is not suffering from that post-COVID box office, which was again still suffering, people are still suffering from that even 2 years later, and sometimes even are still nowadays with the rise of streaming and stuff. With all that combined, I think this movie will be a big, big box office hit. And well, my bad, I'm just shaking the camera there. So yeah, I think that if I were to guess like a gross number for this worldwide, I mean, assuming it releases in all the markets, I'd say. It's got a floor of the same as the last one in a billion. It's so like that is crazy saying that the floor of a movie is a billion, but unless something unexpected happens in the lead up or this is like literally like reviewed like it's Morbius, like unless that happens, I'm thinking floor of 1 billion, ceiling of 1.7, right in the middle, I'll guess 1.4 billion. That's my guess for Jurassic World Rebirth. I'm gonna come back to this when the movie comes out. Um, yeah, so I think the one thing I will say though is presuming good word of mouth for each of these three, Jurassic will do the best, I think. I think assuming that the general audience likes this one enough, I think it'll do the best over these two just because of the previous box office success. And obviously we know like in a vacuum, Superman and maybe even the Fantastic Four are bigger IPs and franchises than Jurassic World or Jurassic Park, but that's like you can't really judge that yet because to be that huge box office success in the movie theaters, you have to have not only a precedent of like animated series and comic books and being one of the oldest superheroes ever. Like not only that, you need to also have a previous box office precedent, which the next two I'm going to talk about don't, and Jurassic does. So that's kind of what my opinion is there. So yeah, that's putting Jurassic number one. So yeah, for number two and three, I've been kind of debating about this for a while, just because I am on comic book Twitter, and it has become a very big point of discussion with fans of both Superman and DC and Marvel and Fantastic Four. And I think it will be very close. Again, I'm presuming here that both Superman and Fantastic Four will have good word of mouth, not only with comic book fans, but also the general box or the general audience. And I know someone would probably think of that and say, well, Thunderbolts had amazing, critical and fan response. Why didn't that make a billion? And the reason is because like I'm being totally honest here, like the Thunderbolts, as good as that movie was, are just not a marketable brand. Like they are a very tough sell because the characters are not at the top of Marvel's catalog, and the name Thunderbolts is just not a movie that a general audience member would usually go to. And it's still going to eke out a very impressive box office number for what the movie is. And again, that movie is amazing. Please go see it if you haven't already. I have plenty of reviews on the channel for you to go check out. But that compared to these two are in Superman and Fantastic Four, like these are two of the biggest IPs in all of superhero media. Like I would say both of them are top 10, if not top five overall in media. So that's why good word of mouth actually matters more here because people are more likely to see a good word of mouth. There's all these buzzwords I'm using, like good word of mouth and box office precedent. Like I apologize for that, but it's relevant here. A People are more likely to go and see a good word of mouth Superman and or Fantastic Four movie compared to a good word of mouth Thunderbolts movie because of the brand what is the word I'm looking for? The brand recognizability, I guess is what I'm looking for. That's just the reality. So anyway, I've been going back and forth this for a while, and no matter what I say, if I do put Fantastic Four at number two here, which I'm going to do, I'll just say that right now. Um, you know, anyone who's a DC fan or anyone who's anyone will just say, "Oh, you're only saying that because you're a Fantastic Four fan and you just want it to do better." Like, yes, obviously, I want Fantastic Four to do well, but I'm not rooting against Superman. Like, I'm not rooting against anyone here. So, and I can give a genuine reasoning as to why I am saying that Fantastic Four will make more than Superman. And this is one of those things where like I think that these will be neck and neck. Like I think this is going to be a very interesting box office battle to follow. I do think Jurassic World will be a step above these two, but I think that both of these will be fighting to the end of the summer in terms of their box office. And what's really going to come down to is how much does Superman make in that 2 week stretch before Fantastic Four. I think that's what it's coming down to. Because here's the thing. Fantastic Four comes out July 25th, obviously, and people have been concerned about its box office because it comes after the movie we just talked about on July 2nd in Jurassic World, and then Superman on July 11th, and they're saying, oh, there's too much competition. It's gonna not like flop, but people are saying it's not gonna do too well because of the competition. And I think that's a bit of a myth. And the reason for that is that let's recognize here, like July 2nd, July 25th, they are literally 23 days apart. So like they are over 3 weeks apart. So listen, Jurassic is going to take some money for Fantastic Four, like we know that for a fact, but its big box office weekends are going to be coming in the time before Fantastic Four comes out. And Fantastic Four's strongest week is going to be really the only time that Jurassic is going to take big numbers from Fantastic Four. So it's not really going to make too much difference because like once we get into August, like mid-August and late August, Jurassic is going to be like really slowing down. I mean, that's just how it is. And I think it will have good legs, but its legs will not be able to be as good as Fantastic Four, for example, because you have to understand Fantastic Four comes out in late July, like the last week in July, and the legs it's going to be able to have and if for those who don't know, by legs I mean like what money it's going to make off the back half of its release, not the first week, but in August in September, how consistent will it be able to be on the box office, before it leaves theaters. And in August and September, it will be the one making the most money out of those three because it came out the latest. And besides from those two movies coming out in July, there's not a lot of huge competition in August and September. I actually should have looked up what the movies that are coming out are, but excuse me, there's not a lot of competition in August, September. And my point is that Fantastic Four will be able to make a lot of money consistently throughout these next 2 months after it comes out because of the fact there's not a lot of competition. And look no further than last year, Deadpool and Wolverine came out on the exact same day, I think. I think it was literally, it was either the 26th or it might have been the 27th. I can't remember. But it was around the exact same time. And Deadpool Wolverine came out and it made 1.6 billion or whatever. It's the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time. Now, I'm not saying Fantastic Four is going to reach that level because as we are right now, Deadpool and Wolverine also are both bigger IPs than Fantastic Four in the movies right now, just because of they've just gotten more popularity because they've been adapted more in the movies. But if you're looking at the competition in August, like you have the week after The Bad Guys 2 is coming out, like sure, um, these are a lot like everything here, like you got Honey Dole and Caught Stealing, like these are movies that are low budget, kind of movies that aren't going to make huge at the box office. Will probably be good awards contenders, but yeah, you really don't have anything that is going to be a super huge contender until Predator on November 7th. Like that is the next big franchise movie as far as what I'm looking at right here. Um, yeah, I mean, you got him coming out September 9th, the Jordan Peele produced horror movie. But again, like none of these are going to make as much money consistently, besides from their opening weekend, as Fantastic Four. So the reason I have that at number two, the number one reason I have it at number two is the fact that I think it will have more legs than Superman. The number two thing is I think people that say Superman is going to make more money are still underestimating the Marvel Studios brand. Like the fact of the matter is that you survey 100, 1,000 people you survey 100 people about what the studio's movie they would rather see, Marvel or DC, I would give you a very hefty guarantee that more people would say, and significantly more people would say Marvel compared to DC. And again, I know that that's not to the fault of this new Superman movie because that is because of the old franchise and how much they tainted the DC brand and the DC filmmaking brand. But it's the realities. The fact is that people will trust the Marvel Studios as a universe more compared to Superman and DC as a franchise. That's just how it is. So I think that that really does matter. And I think even though right now Superman is probably a bigger IP than Fantastic Four, I think that's probably true. I think that the reality is that with the general audience, like I was saying earlier, Fantastic Four will be able to win over more people because it's Marvel Studios and because it is these characters that are going to come out and get a lead right into their big Avengers movie next year. You know, it's been confirmed they're going to appear in Doomsday next year. And Thunderbolts is really good. So people are kind of high in the Marvel Studios brand right now. And I think Ironheart's going to be a success for them too. So, which is a show coming out in June. So that's what I think it comes down to here is like the Marvel Studios brand should be able to carry them a lot here, especially with these barren months in August and September. And I do think that in the year of 2025, I think more people will show up, more non-comic book fans will show up for a Fantastic Four Marvel Studios movie than a DC Studios Superman movie. I just think that's how it is. And this is not really part of my argument, but like the last argument I have is the fact that um the cast of Fantastic Four is a lot more recognizable and notable than the Superman cast. Like nothing against David Corn Sweat and Rachel Brosnan and Nicholas Hoult. Like nothing against those guys, but like let's just be honest, pretty much everybody in the Fantastic Four cast is more recognizable than anyone besides some like, you got Nathan Fillion playing Green Lantern, and like you got Isabel Merced as a rising star. Like, you got people like that, but like if we're talking about the main cast, someone like Pedro is way more popular than anybody in the main cast of Superman. And I think even people like Vanessa and Joseph and Eben are as well because of the popularity of The Bear and the popularity of Stranger Things and the popularity of Mission Impossible and The Crown. That's for Vanessa. I just think that that does matter a little bit as people will be saying like, who is this new Superman that we've never heard of this actor before, and we want Henry Cavill back. Like that's stupid and silly, I know, but like that's how people think. And people are doing that to an extent with Fantastic Four, as I referenced earlier. People were saying, "Oh, bring Chris Evans back," and people didn't appreciate the old movies enough, and those are masterpieces. Like again, these people do exist, and they don't exist as much as people think. Like Twitter and TikTok probably makes up like 1% of the box office, but still, it does matter having a cast that is more marketable than the other. And I do think that is the fact with Fantastic Four versus Superman, which is why I'm putting Fantastic Four at 2 and Superman at 3. If I were to go with numbers predictions here, dude, I've been saying I hope I'm so right about this because I did a similar thing with Across the Spider-Verse 2 years ago where I predicted that it would hit a billion and it was like just short. I think it hit like 850 million, which is a incredible success. I'm not saying that's a bad thing or not, but I spent months arguing that it would hit a billion and having the reasoning for it. And I'm worried I'm gonna get duped again here, even if it does beat Superman, if it falls like just short of 1 billion. But that's what I'm going for. I think with this cast and with Marvel Studios people being pretty high in Marvel Studios right now after Thunderbolts, um, with the fact that there's a potential Robert Downey Jr. Doctor Doom cameo going on, like obviously those rumors been floating around. I'm not even saying that's as a leak. Like I don't know, but there's rumors floating around. It would make sense. The only time for him to appear before Doomsday as the main villain. That'll bring people in seats. I think with the cast, like I said, I think with August and September being empty, I think with all that and assuming this movie does receive good word of mouth with both critics and fans, I'm thinking a billion. I'm thinking almost exactly a billion or a little bit below that. I think the ceiling for this movie is probably like 700 million. Um, or or the floor, sorry. I mean the floor for this movie, I feel maybe I'm overshooting a little bit, but I'm gonna go the range is 700 million floor to 1.2 billion ceiling for this movie. And I think that it will be right around the middle. So like literally my guess is going to be a billion, but I think it'll be around 950 to a billion. And um, maybe I'm overshooting it, and maybe my bias is showing. But like, feel free to argue with me in the comments about this. Trust me, I've gotten to a lot of arguments about this, not like unhealthy arguments, but like I've gotten to a lot of arguments about this, and trying to explain why I think this movie will do really well and be very profitable. Regardless, like that ceiling of 700 million, if that or that I keep saying ceiling, if that floor of 600 million or 700 million is true, and if I'm right about that, that would be a huge success for Marvel. Like that, I'm sure the budget for this is like between 100 and 200 million. Like that would be a success for them. Anything higher than that, anything higher than the budget would be a huge success. That's kind of what Marvel's trying to rake out right now. And really what they need the most is for not only that, but for the movie to just do well critically and for people to care about these characters going into Doomsday and Secret Wars where they're going to obviously have pivotal roles. Like that's important as well. But that would be a success for Marvel. As long as it can be 700 million or higher, like obviously a billion would be a huge success and they'd be greenlighting a sequel instantly, which I think will happen regardless. But um, yeah, I think that's my guess for Fantastic Four, just because, again, presuming there's good word of mouth, I think that's where I'm at for Fantastic Four at number two. And then number three would be obviously Superman. And I think my guess for that would be a floor of around 500, 600 million. And I think that's the thing is that the I might be the same because the floor and the ceiling for these two movies is so similar because like they are so similar in a way, and I think that it's going to be so close in these two movies. I really do think it'll be very close. I could be way off on this, but I really do think that it's going to be close between Superman and Fantastic Four. I'm going to go the floor for Superman is 600 million, and the ceiling is 1 billion. I think that's where I'm at for that. I think it'll be somewhere in that range. And if I were to guess, I'm going to go with 800 million for Superman. So if you're keeping track at home, I said I said 1.3 billion for Jurassic. No, I think it said 1.5. No, I'm forgetting. I mean, we'll go back and rewind the tape, but what did I say? I think I said 1.5. Yeah, I think I did. We'll say that. So 1.5 for Jurassic, or around 1.4, 1.5 is my guess. Um, Fantastic Four, I'm saying almost exactly 1 billion. And then Superman, I'm going for 800 million. And again, like a lot of people probably think I'm overshooting all these, but the reality is like this is a month and a summer that is going to be akin very similar to the Barbenheimers of the world. And even coming up here with Stitch and Mission Impossible, we're both tracking to be very big successes. Like it is possible for movies to coexist like this at the box office at the same time. We have seen that. And there's been a lot of movies that have come out this year that have not done well at the box office, and it's brought together the question like, are people done with going to movies at this point? And there is some credence to that point, but um, we just saw a movie like Sinners be received so well by critics that it made whatever it was. It's making like 300 to 400 million on a 50 million budget with an original creative vision from a director. Like if that can do that, who knows what these huge big IPs can make in July? And obviously the summer box office is different than the January through early May box office. Those are obviously different in terms of much more people are going to the movies in the summer, with certain demographics. But yeah, I mean, those are my predictions, obviously. And again, feel free to at me on Twitter, YouTube, any place to get in contact with me because I do genuinely feel I have a sound basis behind this. I'm not just saying this to hate on a certain movie or just because I love the Fantastic Four. Like that's not what it is. Feel free to debate me on this. And last thing I'll say is just I am very happy that we're going to have a month like July where there are three big movie releases coming out, and it'll get people back to going to the movies again. And more than anything else, it's just exciting to be able to talk about Superman and the Fantastic Four as big box office brands again. Like that is my big hope for the summer is that both James Gunn and Kevin Feige and Matt Shakman, who's directing Fantastic Four, all of them, I'm hoping are able to bring back the interest in these characters and in honestly DC Studios as a whole in that case, but bring back interest in Superman and the Fantastic Four as characters and have people really invested in these brands again for the first time in Superman's case, almost ever since like the Christopher Reeve movies and Fantastic Four, I guess since the 2000s, but even just ever for them, they've never been a huge box office draw. So yeah, and Jurassic World is obviously kind of involved in that as well. But like as a fan of superheroes, that is very exciting to see these two movies get a creative reset for the characters and kind of finally try to tell a proper adaptation of these characters and of this story. And as well, having a little appetizer before that, having Jurassic World with a star-studded cast, a good filmmaker, and a plethora of trailers that have looked good so far. So it probably will be a very successful and good movie. So yeah, that is the reality. Is I am genuinely hoping that all these movies do well. Like I'm not, obviously I'm gonna be like rooting for Fantastic Four to be number one and all that. Like I'm obviously just that's who I am. A fan of Marvel and a fan of the Fantastic Four first, but if Superman outweighs Fantastic Four at the box office, good for them. I mean, honestly, good for them. As long as they all do well. Like, I don't want Fantastic Four to get like 200 million and these get like a billion. Like, it's not what I want. But I want them all to do well. I think it's very beautiful that we're getting, and I think competition is good. I should say. I think competition in it will end up being a good thing for all three of these brands, and specifically, obviously, the latter too. So yeah, again, let me know what you think in the comments and kind of what your hype are for these three movies. Like I said, if I were to rank my hype for those movies, it would be Fantastic Four, Superman, and Jurassic, but I'm excited for all of them, obviously. And then my box out prediction is number one, Jurassic, number two, Fantastic Four, number three, Superman, but those two are neck and neck, and even they're somewhat close to Jurassic World as well. So, yeah, debate me in the comments. Talk to me about what your predictions are. I'm willing to listen and willing to hear out your arguments. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. I will be back. If everything goes well, I'm going to be seeing. No, well, I definitely. I'm going to be seeing Mission Impossible tomorrow night. I'm recording this on the 22nd Thursday, and the 23rd Friday night, I will be going to see Mission Impossible. So the next time you'll hear from me will be a written review for Mission Impossible on Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon, and then I will be doing a also video review. As long as it's like really good. If I have nothing to talk about, then I'll update everyone on Twitter. But I'm assuming it'll be pretty good. So. Like I said, written review on Saturday, and then a video review on either Sunday or Monday, probably Monday, but I will get back to everyone on that. So yeah, very excited for Mission Impossible, and I'm gonna see Stitch at some point as well. So I'll probably do a review for that next week if I get the time. But yeah, these two movies in Mission Impossible or Stitch are kicking off the summer, and then before you know it, we'll have July with Jurassic World, Rebirth, Superman, and Fantastic Four First Steps. So, yeah, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you soon for the Mission Impossible content and just in general. Thanks for listening.